So, hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining in and welcome to this wish celebration event. It's lovely to see as many people as you can on these Zoom things anyway here. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lucy Malarkey, although it does say that in my little box, doesn't it, with the name anyway. And as you'll probably be aware, I joined the Wish family at the beginning of January, stepping into the big shoes vacated by Helen. Helen doesn't like me saying the big shoes, but because I'm only a size 4, hers are bigger than mine, so I'm allowed to say that. That Helen left as the new MD for Wish. And, you know, stepping into the amazing work that you've got ongoing at Wish. Oh, I think I'm echoing. Have I stopped? Yeah, I seem to have stopped. Brilliant. And whilst I've only been here a really short time, it's 2 months, but as a Wish MD working 1 day a week, that's actually only 8 days, which feels like significantly longer than that, I have to say. But anyway, whilst I've only been here a short time, you know, I've been so impressed in that time with the commitment, the dedication, the passion that all of you in the region show. It's just phenomenal. And I feel really, really privileged to be part of this Wish family. I'm really delighted that I made this move and joined you. So that's fantastic. And what I'm going to do a bit later on is share with you a bit more about me, a bit more about my background, and also in that, you know, relatively short space of time, I suppose, what I'm identifying as, I think, my priorities for Wish, certainly over the next 18 months. But before any of that, you know, what's in store tonight? What's the running order as part of this thank you and celebration event? Well, in a moment, hopefully, I'm going to be handing over to Deborah as the chair of the board to say a few words. And then, again, hopefully, we're going to be joined by the amazing Stacey Copeland. I keep wanting to say Stacey Solomon, and I've said it to a few people who've gone, really? You've got Stacey Solomon? Then I'm like, no, it's not. It's Stacey Copeland. She's equally as amazing, but not on TV, perhaps quite so often. And Stacey is absolutely amazing. She's going to share with us her story, which is about gender equality in relation to sports. So I don't want to like ruin it by saying anything more, but it is amazing, definitely. And there'll be plenty of time for questions. And I think after you've heard her speak, there probably will be questions that you'd like to ask her. But before any of that, and despite, you know, the fact that some people will have done already, and that's absolutely fine, but those of you who have got your boxes, and if you haven't yet had the opportunity to open it, please let this be the moment of reveal. Oh, Jill's given away a bit of a clue there as to what might be in, but please open your boxes.
I needed to put it in the fridge.
So
I'm delighted that my green paper matches my outfit.
That's wonderful, yeah.
Definitely need to be careful if you're opening it round a dog. Mine just fell on the floor and the dogs are all over it. Running off with my chocolate.
I like the Wish purple.
Hi everyone.
Hi Deborah. We're just doing the big reveal of the boxes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Hello.
Nicola, well spotted. So please feel free, where it is appropriate and you're not driving later or whatever, to open your Prosecco now, to eat your chocolate, because it is all about celebrating and enjoying. So please nip out for a sec, go and get yourself a glass. Here's one I prepared earlier. Obviously, I don't have it on my office desk all the time, I assure you, despite the earlier references to wine bottles in the recycling. But please, yes, do open it and enjoy the contents that you've got there. So,
it's not a bad one.
It's a screw top, everybody, as well.
Yes.
So
I did spend a few minutes trying to prise it off, but it's screw.
So yes, everybody, for those of you who've got a glass or are able to pour one now, where it's appropriate, I would like to say, as I just said in the chat there, you know, a big cheers to you all, because, you know, we wouldn't be an organisation without all of you, the fantastic work that you all do. So thank you all very much, everybody. And what I would like to say as well is that these fantastic gift boxes, I can take no credit for whatsoever. It's all down to Helen and Jill for all the logistics and the work that Jill's do, and Helen sorting out the boxes before she left. So thank you to Helen and Jill, and thank you to all of you for being amazing. Cheers. I'll just test it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's all right, isn't it? Perfectly drinkable, everybody. That's what we suggest. Okay. Oh, and a twirl as well, Nicola's displaying. Lovely.
Pure decadence.
Yeah, bubbles in a bath tonight, says Charlotte. That's true. Bubbles in a bath.
Oh, lovely.
Oh. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Deborah, who would like to say a few words.
I would.
Yes. Well, over to you then, Deborah.
Great. So hi everyone. Sorry, I was a little bit late there getting in. I just want to say thank you this evening. Well, no, actually, the first thing I want to say is I love Wish, and I think we're the most beautiful club in the world because we're representative and we try and be diverse, as you can see just by looking on the screen here. Sorry. I just want to take the time to thank you all for coming to the afternoon event. The event is just one way in these really strange times that we live in that we can show our appreciation to all of you as volunteer board members. We want to thank you for the energy and the time that you give to Wish, because without you, there wouldn't be a Wish. So I hope you can stay for the full 90 minutes. Just take a little bit of time out of your day for you, just to enjoy. Wish is a networking club, in essence, was set up to help women just like you to connect. But why are we connecting? I believe we're connecting because we want to grow as individuals. And today we're going to hear one woman's story from which we will be able to see how interesting her life is and how she has grown. And we will have a lot to learn from this. But I also want to remind you that we all have an interesting life. We've all got a story to tell. And we've all got something to teach other people. I don't know if you've ever played the game, who would play you in a film about the story of your life? I can see some heads going. I know I have, so I'll share with you just for 2 minutes. So if there was a story about my life, I'd have to have a few people play me because there's a few of the traits that they would need to come out. So the first one would be Jennifer Hudson, because she sings how I sing in my head. The next one would have to be Queen Latifah, because she's got curves, she's got attitude, and she really believes in herself. She knows that she's beautiful. And then the last one would be Vanessa Williams, because she's just simply gorgeous. I used to look at her when I was in my 20s, and she's in her 60s now, and she's still absolutely phenomenal. I don't know your story. We've all got our own story. But I know that you've probably, at some point in your life, had self-doubt, you've lacked courage, you've worried about things, you've dealt with stress. You've probably, at some point in your life, struggled financially. And the big one, you thought to yourself at some point, at the same time, I know that there's probably someone looking at you and wondering, wow, how confident is that woman? Where does she get her energy from? Blimey, she's brilliant. She's so full of power. God, I wish I could be just a little bit like her. You see, so often we don't recognise our own story. However, there is that you probably won't be able to see in yourself. Sorry, all the screens just went black for a moment. So you can all still see me, yeah? Can you all still see me?
Yes.
Somebody
Yes.
wave their hand if you
Yes.
can still, you can, okay, cool. Right, bear with me. See, we don't recognise the significance of our own story, but there will be someone who will look at you today, who will see something in you that you probably don't see in yourself. And this could be your colleague, your boss, or even a stranger. I did have a couple of examples to give you, but I won't. I think we should get on with this, with the event. But my hope is that when you spend time working for or attending any of the meetings at Wish, we can all see through the power of networking our own unlimited potential to do better. By the way, please don't translate that you're doing bad. That's not what I'm saying. As you spend time with Wish, always remember that this is about learning more as well as connecting with others for the purpose of improving our lives and improving the lives of those people around us. So enjoy the event, and I hope to connect with you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. That was lovely. So I'm now going to introduce you all to the amazing Stacey Copeland, who is here, isn't she? Yes. As I say that. And Stacey's going to share with us all a really powerful and inspirational journey. Like I say, I don't want to say anything else because I won't do it justice. But Stacey, can I pass over to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant, you're there.
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks, Deborah. That was great to listen to and hear a little bit more about Wish. So thanks, and I hope everyone's enjoying the Prosecco. And if you're not enjoying what I'm saying, just drink a bit more and hopefully it'll be better. Yeah, so my background is in sport. That was my absolute first love. And there were two sports that I loved, which were football and boxing. Now, you may well be aware that in women's football, we were banned from football in this country for 50 years, from 1921 to 1971. Now, the ban was lifted before I was born, but the Football Association didn't officially recognise women's football until 1993. So when I was playing at primary school, it was really difficult because there were no girls' teams, there was no leagues, no structures. There was no way you could, play proper football, if you like. And they also had a rule that you weren't allowed to play with the boys. So that made it really difficult to actually access playing football, although it was, there was no ban any longer. At playtime and lunchtime at school, it was all I wanted to do. And I don't know really what drew me to football. We love what we love, don't we? But in the playground, it did tend to be quite divided, that the majority of the boys would be playing football and the girls were doing a mix of things that I wasn't interested in at all. One was hopscotch, which had very limited appeal to me. That thing with elastic bands, even less so. And lots of weddings, which I'm still not interested in doing. So there was all of that going on, and I just wanted to play football. I was drawn to that. So every playtime and lunchtime, I'd be playing football. When they had the first training session for the first football team at primary school, I went along and I got picked. And it was, honestly, I can't begin to tell you that feeling of playing in my first proper football game where, there were real goals and a referee. I had my first footy boots that my dad got me from Woolworths, so it was a really long time ago. It was just so exciting to be doing what you love. And then, partway through the game, a parent and the teacher on the other team realised that I was a girl, because I had a ponytail. And they shouted across the pitch and made me leave the game. Now, at that time, as a 7-year-old, I didn't have the words to articulate how that felt, but now I know I felt humiliated. I felt ashamed, really, of, you know, and like a weirdo for doing what I loved. Now, for some kids, that stops them even carrying on, and I totally understand why, because it's a horrible feeling. But for me, for whatever reason, that didn't happen. I went home and I said to my mum, "You're going to have to cut my hair short." She was a shocking hairdresser, to be fair, and I came out with this horrific bowl cut, like God knows what she was thinking. But anyway, so I could pretend to be a boy and play football. The problem with that was other kids then saying, "Why do you want to be a boy?" Well, I didn't want to be a boy. I just wanted to play football. And at the time, that was the only way that I could. Now, my other love, boxing, was a lot more obvious, my influences in that, because my dad was a boxer. My granddad ran our gym. So, and I just loved everything about it. From the minute I first went in, the sound of the skipping ropes and the gloves in the bag, even the smell, which is a bit minging, leather and sweat, not the best, but I just loved it. And it felt like home to me. I loved the training. I loved everything about it. And I used to go to the gym 3 nights a week, would be at the shows at the weekend. And then we got to about the age of 11, when you can start boxing and having skills bouts. And me and my little group of lad mates, who all trained together, went to my granddad and said, "Right, we're ready to box." And he said, "You know, great, we'll get you to see the doctor so you can get your medical card, get your license, etc." And then he looked at me and he said, "You can't box, kid." And I said, What are you talking about?" And he said, "It's illegal for females to box." And I thought, I mean, to me, I was 11 at the time, illegal means like burglary and murdering, you know, proper stuff, not like doing a sport as a woman. It was ridiculous. But that was how it was. And it wasn't to be made legal for another 7 years after that. So there weren't any opportunities for me in boxing at all. So luckily, my passion of football, I followed. I did have a lot of problems at school, as many of you may have done, for lots of different reasons. One of the problems was that I was a little bugger, but the other problem was that lots of kids would call me shim and she-male and boy. Teachers would be constantly questioning my sexuality, and I didn't even know what they were talking about. People still make assumptions about that now. I mean, I'm heterosexual, and I don't know who people think that man is with all my photos, who I go on holiday with and have meals with. They must think, "Oh, really close with the brother," or whatever. But they make assumptions about women in sport. I don't know why. But anyway, so I got all of that. Suffice to say, as a young girl growing up, I thought, what is wrong with me? And I didn't dress like a boy to dress like a boy. I dressed like a boy because there weren't any other versions of football kits. They didn't have women's fitted football kits then. In fact, in the 80s, when I was at primary school, they barely had women's sports clothing at all, unless you're an Olympic athlete and then you wore those knicker things, which who's going to run around Manchester in them? They had sort of, it was all that Jane Fonda gear, wasn't it? I mean, my mum was a fitness instructor. She lived in leotards and pop socks. I'm hardly going to go and play football looking like Jane Fonda, am I? So that's all we had was boys, football kits and sportswear. So if you wanted to play football, that's what you wore, a massive, humongous, oversized football kit. So there was a lot of misunderstanding of others, but what that projected onto me ultimately was, what is wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. And it took me a really, really long time to realize there wasn't, not because of the sports I chose anyway. I was just an extraordinary girl. I was doing something really different. But it took me a long time to get comfortable with that, which I'll come to in a minute. So I went into football, played for England. I played for Doncaster Bells and Tranmere and a few teams in the Women's Premier League here, and then took the opportunity to go to America on a scholarship and spent 5 years there. That was a massive learning curve, living in a different country, you know, turning up with 200 quid in my pocket, and I'd left everything. I had a house and a boyfriend. That was the least of my worries. But anyway, I left him and went off to chase this dream. And I was there for 5 years. And then I went to Brazil, which for any football fan is like a pilgrimage. It's incredible. Amazing people, amazing culture. I loved it. And then finished my playing career in Sweden. totally different cultures and societies that I got to experience just through sport. But then I'd done everything I wanted to do in football. You know, I'd played in the FA Cup final, played for England, played abroad. And, you know, like some of you may have had that longing and desire to pursue a dream that you may have had to put on hold, as I did for boxing from being a young girl. I'd never lost that. I'd kept up with the training. I was still a massive fan of the sport. And by then it was legal for women. There was a national championship, European championship. And I thought, it's my chance. This is my chance. So when I got back from Sweden, I went to meet with my dad. And he said, oh, are you going to settle down now? I was like, what are you talking about? I said, no, I'm going to box. I didn't really say much. And I said, you know, now it's my time. And he rang me a couple of days after and said, well, I've been having to think about it. And if you want to do it, then that's all right. I was like, Dad, girls like me, we don't ask. I was telling you, that's what's happening. And he was like, all right. So he was my coach and we had a brilliant time as father and daughter. Don't work for everyone to have the, you know, dad in the corner, but for me, it was brilliant. And we got to go all over the place, Kazakhstan and Romania, Japan, Korea, competing for England in GB. I won the national title in 2015, which made me and him the first father and daughter to both win senior national titles. Although I did it better and I'm way better looking and funnier. But anyway, we both won one. And then I got to go to the European Championships. And I cannot begin to tell you what a difference that made to my life for two reasons. Firstly, having been banned from the sport as a kid, to then not just being able to compete, but actually standing on that podium with a medal around my neck, watching the England flag be raised, blew my mind. And I'm not going to say, you know, everything that's impossible eventually will be, because that's not realistic. We all know it isn't. But sometimes the unthinkable can happen, and it did for me. And it was just, honestly, it was phenomenal. And the second thing where it was a big pivotal moment for me is that, and some of you might relate to this, you know, when something goes well and you do well and you achieve, but there's that voice in your head saying you don't deserve it. And it's not a helpful voice, and we all wish it'd piss off, but it's there. And it's that little thing on your shoulder, and you're like, where have you come from? And it was always there. But that was the first time it wasn't. And honestly, I stood on that podium and like made a right idiot myself, crying my eyes out right at the end, like a bad cry, like, but it was the first time ever that I'd had a moment like that and felt I deserved it, and that I belonged there, and that it was okay to embrace the moment. And that had a massive impact on my life going forward. So then after that, I was getting ready for the Europeans and World Championships 2 years later. I had a very routine surgery, which unfortunately went wrong, and they caused a chemical burn all over my leg. And it got infected, I got really ill. It was just awful. So it was about 12 months before I got right from that. And so I missed the Europeans, missed the Worlds. Now at the time, in the amateurs, it was limited to the Europeans and the Worlds for me, because although they introduced women's boxing back into the Olympics in 2012, they only had 3 weight categories. So I can't begin to tell you how excited we all got when they said women's boxing is going to be back in the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, European Games. We were like, oh my God, this is it. Only to then announce, because we assumed there'd just be equal weight categories to men, and certainly the same number of weight categories that we competed in the Worlds and the Europeans. No, 3 weight categories for women. So we compete at 13 weight categories. So as you can imagine, you know, if you're right in the middle of 2 weight categories, as I was, then I either had to grow 3 foot or chop a bloody leg off to make the weight below. Not happening. So it was devastating to realise that big dream was done and gone. And that, by the way, is the difference between diversity and inclusion. Diversity is like getting an invite to the park, which is great. Women's boxing got invited. Thanks very much. Inclusion is being able to play once you get there. If you're just in the park watching everyone else play, that isn't the same. So a big difference between those. So I decided to turn professional. There was only 6 UK females professional at that time. There's over 40 now. That was in 2016. So it's growing rapidly. And I had a few fights and it was going well. And then I got the chance to go to Zimbabwe and fight for the Commonwealth title, my first title, which was you know, going out of my comfort zone because I'd not boxed abroad before. I didn't know much about the opponent. It was massive over there. It was really built up because I was the first British person of any gender to box in Zimbabwe for 36 years. It was on their free-to-air sports channel, so there was over 1 million people watched. It was just a massive build-up. It was amazing. I loved Harare, where we visited. We got to visit lots of schools and meet people. It was brilliant. The fight itself was definitely the toughest of my life because she was an absolute unit and she hit really hard. So it was a really tough fight, but I won, which was great. And I became the first British woman to win the Commonwealth title, and it was an amazing experience and all of that. But then I didn't get a belt. So I knew 2 days before the fight that there wasn't going to be a belt, which is hard because that's kind of the point, isn't it? To get that medal, that trophy, that belt, whatever it might be. So to know it wasn't going to be there was difficult, but at the end of the day, you've got a job to do and you need to get on with business, which I did. So when I got home to England on the Monday, so I fought on the Friday night, got back Sunday night, was back in work Monday morning. I rang the head of the Commonwealth Boxing Council and I said, it was a great experience. It was amazing. You know, it was brilliant, but not getting the belt wasn't quite the fairy tale that I had in mind. And this is what his reply was. He said, well, I can explain what's happened. The manufacturers of the replica belt have ceased production. So I said, right, what's that got to do with me? And he said, well, we do replica belts for women and real belts for men. Yay! So I was like, right, why is that? And he said, well, there's more money in men's boxing. I said, yes, but there's only a 500 quid difference, by the way, between the two belts. But I said, yes, but even if it meant paying for it with my own money, me and my opponent, for that matter, should have had the option to have that belt there, because I will never get that moment back, ever. I've no photos of me and my coach with the belt after, I've no memories of it because it didn't happen. And that wasn't the worst bit, actually. The worst bit was when we got back to Manchester Airport and it had been live streamed back home, the fight. So loads of our community, family, friends had all watched it in pubs and houses. They got screens. It was great. And I didn't have the heart to tell them, oh, by the way, I hadn't got a belt. And they were all so excited about this belt. So we get back to the airport. There they are, loads of mine and my coach's friends and family to greet us and support us and all of that. And I didn't have that belt. And honestly, there's a big difference between, you know, sometimes when you're in either a minority group or an undervalued group or however you want to word it, the people, the dominant group can kind of make it as if you just need to prove yourself. You just need to do this. You just need to do that. I think we have that a lot as women. Or you just need to feel empowered. You just need to be confident. Right, well, we are. You just need to give us the opportunities. But anyway, so we'd done all of that. We'd proved ourselves. We'd put on a great fight. It had been an amazing event. So not getting that belt was not about proving your worth or ability. It was about human dignity and being undervalued. And those are very different things. And that was that burning sense of injustice that I felt at that time. So I said to him, look, I can't do anything about what's happened. How quickly can I have a real belt? To which he said, well, you can have one within a couple of weeks because we've got them here at the head office. But they are quite expensive. So unless you've got a sugar daddy, you probably won't be able to have one. Which again, it's really hard to put into words what it feels like to be spoken to like that. Especially when you put it with all your life in different guises. So lucky for him, this was a phone conversation because I don't think it had gone that well for him had it been in person. But anyway, I also recognise we have to be careful how we go about these battles because it's very quickly they can say, oh, they're hysterical, they're emotional. We've probably all been there where, you know, you're simply voicing an opinion, but we're erratic or with this. So I actually stayed very calm. I didn't even swear. And I said, right, which took a lot of self-control because Mancunians hardly finish a sentence without those adjectives. But anyway, so I said to him, look, this can't happen to a future female champion. So.
Hello.
Hello? Someone just say hello. Hello back. So somebody just, I hope everyone else heard that voice and it wasn't just me.
Yeah, we did.
It's that bloke, he's haunting me. But anyway, get out. So yes, so then they agreed to make a women's Commonwealth title belt, which we got about 6 months after. And now, of course, has been available to all the future Commonwealth female champions since. And that's, you know, it's a good thing. And do you know what's interesting about that? That at the time, I was so upset and angry. You know, when you get that whole mix of emotion, when you don't know whether to punch yourself, punch them, punch a wall, cry, you don't know what to do. It was all of those emotions. And I thought, why is this happening to me again? I felt like I was still at that age going through something that I'd been encountering since I was 6. I was 36 then, 30 years of that same stuff. And it hurt, I was angry, all of that. But there was a point when I thought, actually, I'm exactly the right person for this to happen to. Because at this stage where I'm at, I'm the person who's going to do something about it. And when I made that switch, that's when I felt better. And the reason that's so important is because I'm going to contrast that with what happened when I was 16, 20 years prior. I worked in a factory in a place called Stockport near Manchester. And I got my first ever England call up for the England football team. They get emails now, but you used to get a real life letter in an actual envelope through your letterbox then. And it had the 3 lions on it, the FA crest. It was just the most amazing feeling getting that call up. So I go to my boss and I said, I need a week off, but there was nothing left on those stupid holiday rotas they used to have for minions in the factory. So I said, you know, I need a week off. And he said, what do you need a week off for? And I gave him this letter. And I stood at the other side of this office table, almost floating, dead excited, dead proud. And he didn't say anything for ages. And I was thinking, this isn't quite how I thought it would go. And when he did finally say something, he looked up and he said, you want me to give you a week off to play for a women's football team? And I said, well, it is the England women's football team. And he went, pfft. And he made all these jokes and put downs. And I said, it really means a lot to me. Can I just take it unpaid? To which he agreed. That's nice of him. So I did. And I left the office feeling really small. I also felt like an idiot for thinking it was a big deal, not to play for the England football team, but the women's England football team. I didn't tell any of my colleagues I was going because I felt ashamed really of who I was and what I was doing. It wasn't until weeks later that they saw it in the paper and they're like, oh, I thought you'd gone to Benidorm or something for an holiday. I was like, no, I was in Spain, but it was for the European Championships. We can't all change every individual like him sat behind that desk. Hopefully he's evolved now, but he may not have done. We can't always change everyone. But I see my job and all of your job as trying to make sure particularly young people can come out of an interaction like that. And whether it's been about race or disability or class, background, whatever it might be, that despite those narrow views, they can still feel proud of who they are and what they do. I couldn't as a 16-year-old. And the reason for that is because I had no other narrative. And that's why stories are so important. I know Deborah was saying, we've all got a story. Yes, share it, share it, share it. Whatever way is comfortable to you, whether it's an anonymous blog or telling every bugger that'll listen, or certainly the young people in your life, tell them. Because even if you don't think, you don't have to have been an Olympian or climbed Everest or whatever, just explaining what you've been through and how it's impacted you through a woman's lens and everything else as a mother or not a mother, everything in between is really important. Because as a 16-year-old, I didn't have any other narrative, none. All I'd ever been told was that women don't belong in sport. We're not good enough. Nobody wants to watch it. You're not really attractive. You've heard it all in all different ways through sport or other means. Why would I think any different? Just because I happen to be a woman in sport doesn't mean I'm immune to all of those constant society's messages. So by the time I was 36 and I got spoken to like that over the Commonwealth title belt, I was a different kettle of fish. But that's because I had all these amazing women role models like all of you, women in politics, women in business, women in sport. And I understood that those were myths. So unlearning is dead important, but I think unlearning is just as important, because sometimes the things we've been told are just not true. They're just not true. And I learned about the history of women's sport, that it wasn't that women didn't want to do it or we were just born crap. We were banned from everything. We weren't allowed to be members of Lords in cricket till 1991. Boxing ban wasn't lifted till 98. The football ban wasn't lifted till 71. We weren't even allowed to run more than 200 metres at one point, and we were banned from the marathon. And they banned us from the marathon because they said we'd get big legs, a hairy chest, and your uterus would fall out. My God, we've given birth, women, to every marathon runner who ever lived, and nothing else fell out. So how ridiculous that a person can come through there and no other stuff falls out and we can't jog. Ridiculous. So that took a long time to change. And now look, the minute that opened up for women, we are phenomenal runners. Not all of us, but those who choose to do it and dedicate to it are phenomenal. And the longer the distance, the better we are, because we're mentally superior to other people, in my opinion. We've got an amazing mental ability and mental strength. And that is what they put down to women's ability endurance events down to, by the way. And so the last couple of things that I want to finish on, I think unlearning the untruths that we've all been brought up with and that we're not immune to. That's really important. Understanding the history of women, particularly in the industry that you're in. For me, that was sport. Understanding the barriers we've had to overcome, and therefore not comparing women's sport only to men's, because it is not the same thing. If we're on a 100-meter track, men are already 80 meters. We're still at the start line. When you think of the bans we've had, the lack of, scientific exploration into women's bodies and training and all that, let alone the bans we've had, stigma, lack of investment, all of that. But when you look at the story of women's sport in and of itself, just like you can with women in business, politics, law, whatever, it's phenomenal how far we've come. It's absolutely incredible, and continue to do so. So I think those are important things. I also think this narrative as well about some feminine attributes being weaknesses is rubbish. So I'll give a couple of examples. Gossiping. Like they say, we all gossip, we're bitchy. Well, if we look at that a different way, we're fantastic at expressing emotion, venting and getting it all out. And how many times have you had with female friends, so I work in a school 2 days a week, and it can be really tough sometimes. You're dealing with real life, kids going into foster care and parents dying and all sorts of things. It can be awful. When one of our staff who's female gets upset, she can come into the office and it is like a Formula One pit stop. It is unreal. She comes in, we go, "Are you all right?" They go, that's it. It's like blind down, lock the door, get a cuppa, get this, right, da-da-da. And all this stuff's done to like build her up. She gets it out. She talks about it. We all agree with everything she says in that moment because she's emotional, and that's what you do. And we support her, and it's fantastic. Men can't do that. How are those things, crying, expressing emotion, venting and talking it all out, how are they weaknesses? They're a superpower. And you see, that's why stuff like this works so well, because we're able to do this. When we work together and bring together that feminine power and strength, it's phenomenal. And it doesn't mean it doesn't work well with men as well. Of course it does. Some men are fantastic, just like some women are. But I think that narrative of our strengths being weaknesses, it's really important to change it. Language is important. The fact that we are still saying like a girl to mean that you're doing something rubbish, that we can still use girl as an insult to a little boy in school. Oh, you girl. Why is that still happening? Why is girl still being used as an insult? The fact that many people still now will call me and label me as a tomboy. I understand what they mean, and I don't find it massively offensive. A lot of women will come up to me and say, "I was just like you, I was a tomboy." I know what they mean. It's not an awful thing to say, but it's also not the right way to describe a professional female athlete, because it doesn't tell you what I've achieved, what I've overcome, what I stand for, who I am. And my little niece, Ruby, went to Sports Day last year in a little Manchester City kit. She got called a tomboy. It's also not the right way to describe a little girl who just loves sport or football. And we do exactly the same with boys, by the way. And when I talk about stereotypes, I'm always mindful that these have a detrimental impact on men and boys as well, because this calling a boy a girl thing, we're usually using it when they're expressing emotion, which is the most healthy thing that a little boy can do when they're dealing with emotion, and we stamp it out. So I mean it on both sides in that way. And the final two things I want to finish with, really, something that I've definitely learned through sport is just how unbelievably powerful self-talk is. Because I think, when I think about it, well, I know I have said in my own head and thought things to me directly that I would never, ever say to someone I love or to a friend, ever. And that's bizarre, isn't it? Because really the brain's surely meant to help us more than that, but somehow sometimes it doesn't. And I think we can't do anything about the thoughts that come in. So we can't say, just don't think anything negative. It's unrealistic, but we have to filter it. We have to have a bit of a filter. And I think thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions. And when I was warming up for fights, of course you have those unhelpful thoughts that come in. Oh my God, she's huge. Oh my God, she's really strong. You know, I'm going to get leathered. All of those things. And I had to, those feelings it gave me were fear. I felt disempowered. I didn't feel confident. I'm not going to perform my best. If I can notice those thoughts and park the unhelpful ones and focus on, no, I've trained really hard. I'm mentally prepared. I know what I'm doing. I know my tactics. I believe in myself, etc., etc. The feelings will be confidence, more empowered. And then the actions will be that I'll perform better. So I really think self-talk is critical, not just, you know, avoiding fear, avoiding going out of your comfort zone. We know those things are important, and nerves come along with it, worries come along with it, doubts come along with it. It's going to, because if something matters to you, you'll feel all those things. But I think being mindful of the self-talk is important, and that self-worth is linked with it. And we can't get that externally, whether it's from a job, from sport, whether it's a relationship, or what other people say. That's others' worth. It isn't self-worth. It's a different thing. And as part of that, I think comparing ourselves, we have to be dead careful. And the reason for that is it's dead easy now, isn't it, on social media, especially, to look at how other people look, what lives they've got, what they do, what they're up to, whether they're famous or whether they're just someone you know. It's easy to fall into that comparison trap. And all I would say, if you could remember it, is this, that comparison steals joy. And it steals all of our joy. You can feel dead happy with, you know, what you've got on or what you're wearing or where you're going or whatever. And then some bugger pops up on Instagram who looks absolutely amazing. And if you allow yourself to go, oh Christ, but I don't look like that. So you can't let it steal all your joy from your amazing body and this incredible vessel we've got to do things. But it's easier said than done. I know that. And it's not like you figure it out and it goes away. You have to keep working on it. But those things like self-talk and not comparing and all that, I think are helpful. And the final one is knowing your why. And I know that gets thrown about a bit by businesses trying to just pretend they've, you know, got a why that they care about. But actually, as individuals, we can have. And that why changes, doesn't it? If you become a parent, your why changes instantly. If you get a home, your why changes. A new job, it changes all the time. But I think to sometimes it can be really worth it now and then thinking, what is my why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think if you know your why and you believe in it and it's part of you and it's right in here, the how becomes possible and bearable because it's difficult. And for me, going into that fight in Zimbabwe, those nerves were like electricity running through my body. Honestly, that fear was phenomenal. The pressure to be the first to win the title, the pressure of not knowing much about my opponent, getting booed, obviously, when I went in because they were all supporting her because she was from South Africa, which I totally understand. All of that pressure and the nerves. And I was thinking, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Because it's horrendous. You feel sick, you're shaking, you feel cold. Those nerves are unbelievable. But I knew my why. And I had two major ones that I could fall back on that night. One was that I'd asked to be in that position. That's exactly where I wanted to be. And I was willing to put myself in the position of, you know, letting people, feeling like I could let people down, getting beat, the disappointment and heartbreak of losing and not fulfilling that dream of wanting to test myself against the best in the world, to have that chance to have that one euphoric moment that most people never get in a lifetime of winning that title and making history. That was all worth it to me. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to know how good I could be. So I reminded myself that was a why. And my second why was to inspire other people, that there were loads and loads of little girls and boys for that matter in the gyms back home watching me. And I needed to do my best, even if I lost. I needed to step up and meet that occasion and meet that moment to inspire others. And those whys were big enough and strong enough to overcome those horrific nerves that were saying, let's just go to the airport. Let's just get your bag and go. And it was enough. So it doesn't have to be, you know, fighting for a title. It can be all the things that we're doing. To have that why, I think, can be really powerful. And my why has changed now. Been retired for 2 years from boxing. So my whys have changed, but I'm still very, very clear on what they are. And the last thing is positive petrol pumps. That life's difficult, isn't it, anyway? Even if you just don't go out your comfort zone and you're not taking risks and you're not trying to be your best and all these other things, that posters and stickers and fridge magnet things, if you're just bloody trying to stay alive, it's still hard because other people die who you love, or something happens, or then you've got a gas bill. Now we've got to pay for petrol. That, oh my God, it's like, it's really difficult, let alone when, like all of you, you're trying to make a difference and make your way in careers and all of that, and we're up against it. It can feel like you're going uphill, and your positive petrol can drain. Of course it can, because we're human. That's when positive petrol pumps are so important. And that's why this group that you're part of is such a privilege for me to speak to, and for you to be part of, because you're there for each other. And when that tank gets low, know who those positive petrol tanks are, because they'll fill you back up with that positive petrol tank, and you can keep going on that journey. And we all need that sometimes. So that's why I'm so pleased when I learn about groups like this, because I know exactly what it does for you. So well done for being part of it. And it does take extra effort and time, but hopefully it's worth it to give all of us that extra oomph. And I'll certainly take that away from today. And also you got some Prosecco, so you can fill your tank up with that if you want. I don't drink, but you know, nobody wants me drinking. This is how good I am. We no drink, so not a good idea. But anyway, if there's any questions, I'm really, really happy to answer any. And thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Can I just start before anybody asks any questions?
Amazing.
Just to say, Stacey, you are amazing. You know, so I feel really privileged to have met you, and I know we're sort of friends on LinkedIn. And am I allowed to class that as a proper friendship? Because it's just lovely. And I love your analogy about positive petrol pumps. That's certainly something I think we will use again, because it is so important. Absolutely. You won't have seen it, but a load of the chat that's been going on there is people so inspired, wanting to share your story after this event with their children in particular, and somebody talking about their kids listening really intently to you today. And that story sharing is amazing, and it's just fantastic. And I can see some hands up already, but I probably won't see them all, but I can see that Liz has got hers up. So Liz, do you want to ask the first question?
Lucy, it's not Liz, it's Sandra. I've got the link. I've got the link from Liz. Sorry, Stacey. Yeah, that was amazing. I guess my question is, how do you deal with people who cannot cope with your energy?
I dump them. The boyfriend will tell you that, Sandra.
Everything resonates with what you said, and I'm just like, because I can see some of myself in you, and it's not just because I'm from Manchester, but I guess what I'm saying is, how do you be your authentic self around people who just can't cope with that type of energy? I don't know really. I think obviously you have to adapt to different occasions. So, you know, if there's something serious that you're dealing with, I mean, I do a lot of presenting on the radio now, and this week in particular, we've spoken to a lot of Mancunians who have connections or indeed are from the Ukraine. And, you know, that is purely about compassion and love and caring. So I think, you know, all of us are good at adapting to those different situations, aren't we? But I guess I don't think it matters what it is. In my case, it can be energy that's overwhelming for people. For others, it might be that they're just really boring. For other people, it might be that they're like a bit neurotic about things. Everyone's got something, haven't they? And really, if we just worry about what everyone else thinks, again, it's others' worth, isn't it? And we can't get it externally. Now, if it's hurt someone or upset someone, that's different, isn't it? I think that's important to have that compassion and think, oh God, I didn't deal with that the right way. But other than that, you've just got to be yourself, haven't you? We'll all have things where someone will say,
oh God, I can't be doing with her, she's like Tigger. Fine.
It's better than EO. It's better than EO.
Yeah, exactly. But someone else might say, I like that energy, it gives me energy, off we go. And I try and do things that lend themselves to, and that's suffice to say why I didn't really do so well at school, because sitting down for 50 minutes listening to, trying to learn a bit of bloody French or learning about some plague and Henry VIII and all whatever, had no relevance to me. But as soon as you got me involved with sport, I flourished and stuff. So I've tried to pick jobs that and things that are good for that energy.
That lend themselves to your energy.
Yeah, we've all got something people could moan about, haven't we? But you've got to be yourself. But I think so long as you, even people who do our heading, and I will do people's heading, but so long as you know they've got a good heart, and really when it comes to it, they will be there for you and they'll be compassionate, then I can put up with almost anybody.
Oh, thanks, Stacey. But I'm not plagiarising Lizzie's name, by the way. It's just I used her links, so because she's more organised than I am. Thank you.
I can see that Caroline's got a hand up.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I don't even know where to start, apart from just thank you so much. So much of what you have said and what you've shared resonates with me, and I'm sure with lots of others in the chat. But I mean, I've got a daughter that was boxing, and she gave it up as well, you know, for different reasons. But you know, it was about that fear of what would other people say. But interesting, what was really, really great about that was that she goes to an all-girls school. And when the school found out that she was boxing, they actually made quite a big thing about it for her. So it wasn't something that they shied away from. They really made her feel really proud about it. And my granddaughter plays football, and she's really, really brilliant. And I'm going to play this for her. And I've been sharing this actually, as you've been talking, with lots of different groups that I'm on, and everyone's actually quite envious that we've got you in front of the screen right now. So question I wanted to ask you is that boss who you had to take time off unpaid to go and play, I don't suppose you've had contact with him since, have you?
No, I left there when I was about 17. I was only there for about a year. And then I moved, and I've genuinely no idea what happened. Hopefully, you know, like I say, he's had chance, because in my opinion, I think there tends to be 3 sort of stages when it comes to social change. The first stage is ridicule often. So the very first people to do something just take all the ridicule, like we did in the early days playing football. Yeah. It was just ridiculed. But then you tend to get to the discussion phase where, and do you know what? I remember this happening when I was in America. I was there when Obama got voted in, and it was incredible to be in America when that happened. And the thousands of people that came onto the streets from every race, background, everything, it was just unbelievable. But what had happened in that, and because I was at uni while I was there, because I was doing a sports scholarship, it got discussed a lot, politics, obviously, and they had a massive election coming up. And when this Barack Obama person came out that no one had ever heard of, it was pure ridicule. And people were just saying, that's ridiculous. Because, of course, he'd gone out of the black lane in America, like, what are you doing? You could be a basketball player, or you don't be a politician, never mind a president. And it was all ridicule. And that was from African Americans as well, because everybody was just like, what? And then it got to the discussion phase where people would start saying, did you see that talk he did though, or that rally? It was really good. And have you heard his policy on that? And you could see this shift to discussion.
Yeah.
And the third stage is acceptance, where obviously not every single person was going to accept, but enough for the first black president of America to get voted in. And, you know, if we look at women's sport, it was all ridicule at one time. Now there's many more people at the discussion phase of saying, well, women's football's rubbish, but she's good. Yeah, because she's the one you've seen, you idiot. You know, or she's good, or she's good. And it'll go all the way to acceptance. So things this year, like we're hosting the European Championships in England. We're hosting the Rugby League World Championships. We've got the Commonwealth Games. There'll be loads of unlearning and relearning that's done, where people hopefully very quickly go ridicule, discussion, acceptance. So I really hope that's happened for that man. But I'm also keen to allow time for that, because I don't think everything I think now that I did when I was a teenager, and nor should I, because I've learned and I've met more people and I've experienced more things in life. So I do also think it's important to allow for that chance for people to change and not jump down the throat because they've got it wrong. So I think there's a balance to be had.
No, it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you again. And the uterus story, oh my God, that's going to stay with me forever.
Mine fell out ages ago, Caroline. I've done that much sport. It's in a bloody boxing ring or footy pitch, so I didn't know what it was for anyway, but long
Brilliant. Has anybody got any other questions for Stacey?
I had one, if that's okay. So you mentioned that you do a lot of work in a school, and I just wondered if you could just say a little bit about how you think the younger sort of females coming through sort of at that age now, how their mindset might be different to perhaps how yours and ours was, you know, when we were growing up.
I think that's a great question. Is it Anita?
Yeah, it is.
Actually gone by your real name, unlike Sandra Liz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost incomparable in some ways, because whilst we've had this phenomenal progress in everything for women, we've also had social media, which is an enormous impact, and I'm very divided on whether that's a complete 50-50 of positives and negatives for young people, because I see the impact of it every single day in school, and it a lot of the time it's not great. So reality TV, certain celebrities and superstars who influence young people, I think that's where it's a bit, do you know what I mean? So yeah, there's this massive progress and there's all this great stuff, but then there's that whole area, which is, and I don't know how we're gonna, as human beings, learn to put boundaries and parameters and police, so to speak, social media, because it's easier, isn't it, with physical things. So let's say, for instance, when we started driving, it was all right when there's like one car and a donkey and a horse and cart or whatever they used to go about in. But as there was more and more people with cars, we obviously realised, oh, when we get to these junctions, there's major problems. So we invented traffic lights. Then we realised, oh, people are smashing their head in on the wheel. So we invented airbags. We're really good at coming up with solutions to stuff. For social problems, you know, it took us a really, really long time to figure out social damage. Like if you look at children's books from a few years ago, as a lot of you will for World Book Day now, gollywogs were a standard thing in children's bedtime books. It took, and now we go, you know, back then it was a standard thing. It took us a while to realise why that is damaging to, you know what I mean? And it's the same with women. There are certain things I think it's taken us a long time to realise are quite damaging for us, and we need to figure out solutions for it, because it's not helping our young people whatsoever. So I'm pretty split on that, I have to say. I know it's not a straight answer, but there isn't one to be had.
Thank you.
And Claire's got a hand up as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really great, and it sort of follows on, I guess, from what you've been saying. But I've been really wondering about how it's really important that girls reframe their expectations of themselves, and I can see there's some great work going on there. But it's also really important that boys see that as well, and they reframe their expectations of girls. So how do you see the sort of balance of those? And they're both important.
What do you mean in terms of reframing expectations, like lifting them up, lowering them down?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, like, you know, it's important that girls see you succeeding and being a kind of champion boxer. But it's also important that boys see that you can do that and know that girls can do that. So, because it changes their perceptions of what everyone can do.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you mean now. Yeah,
So
I mean, I think
your thoughts about kind of how important is it to
it's really important.
and girls, and how you do that separately or differently.
I think it's immensely important, because I don't believe in this zero-sum game, that by things being better for one group, the worse for another. You know, if things are made more equal, let's say, for same-sex couples, how on earth does that have a detrimental effect on me as a heterosexual person? If we make things better, like, you know, from all the work with Black Lives Matter or with the women's movement or with this, that and the other, it don't mean white people have to miss out, or men have to miss out, or able-bodied people have to miss out. If we actually put ramps in place so that disabled people can actually access things, what's the problem with that? So I 100% believe in that, Claire, that whatever is better for one group anyway just does benefit the other. Whether we see it or not, or want to see it or not, that's different. We can't, we can't change every individual, but I totally think, I 100% think that it is better. Because, for example, if we celebrate women in sport, boxing, whatever, we're breaking down because I don't think it's gender that's the problem. We have to use boys and girls because that's the words we have. It's actually femininity and masculinity, in my opinion, that's the problem. That if you are a girl, then you should have this set of attributes. If you're a boy, you should have that set of attributes, and you're not allowed to cross. And if you do, it's like, oh my God, and so if women are allowed to be just whoever they are, whether that's they grow up wanting to be a princess and that's their thing, fine, or they don't, like I didn't, and just wanted to kick a football and punch a bag all their life, that's fine too. Surely that then, on the other side of it, will allow men to be whoever they are as well, which might be, toy fighting, rolling about, being a stereotypical boy, whatever, or it might be being a boy who loves Elsa in Frozen, wants to play with baby dolls and whatever. Good, just so that you can be who you are is a good thing. So, but yeah, and I definitely think getting that message across is important, and exposure helps with that. Having more and more different role models, as you will have seen recently, more statues of animals in England than women. So that's sort of, if we all would have been a bleeding cat, we'd be better off, but we're not, are we? So, it's amazing when you start to look into these things, isn't it? So, but anyway, yeah, I think by having more role models, more exposure and more opportunities for women, that hand in hand helps men and women together. It's got to. That's just what I believe.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stacey. And Deborah's got a hand up as well.
Thank you. Yeah, let me just take my hand down. Thank you so much, Stacey. That was really, really inspiring. I'm going to be cheeky. I've got 3 quick questions to ask you. So the first one is the impact of leaving the UK, because you mentioned that you went to 3 different countries and you were studying in the US. What was that impact on you? And do you think, you sounded like you were really driven anyway, but did that, well, you tell it how it is, kind of the impact.
It's massive, Deborah. It's a great question, and it was massive in lots of ways.
Let me do the other 2, and then you can just follow on.
I'll forget them. Let me answer that one. Just
all right, then go on.
Definitely forget them. So dead quickly to answer that one. Just before I went to America, I actually had a really bad time here in England, and I was living in my car for a while. I had to move out of my home with the person I was living with. It was difficult, and sport was that answer for me, if you know what I mean, that second start, fresh start. So I literally turned up with 200 quid in my pocket in a country at 21 when I didn't know anyone, and it was tough in that way, but it taught me I could be independent, I could get by myself. The importance of financial independence for women is absolutely crucial, and that's something I hammer home to the young people. Do not rely on a man to provide for you. That's if obviously you're not in a same-sex relationship, but I'd still say the same. But particularly for girls who've got this notion that men provide for you, that's not a good situation to be in these days, because you're not in marriages for 50 years. And if you haven't got that financial independence and you don't want to be in that relationship, you're stuck. And that's not a good place to be. So financial independence for women, I think, is dead important, in a different way to it being important for men. So it taught me about that. And then also culturally, I just gained so much from living in America and then Sweden and spending a bit of time in Brazil. I just think travel, if you can do it and you're able to, is just such an incredible education. And I just gained so much from it, learning about some things that you go, oh my God, thank God we don't do this in Britain. And other things that you're like, oh, this is much better than what we have, and it teaches you about that as well, and adapting to different cultures and different people. So I enjoyed that. And I went to the refugee camps as well in France for a while, doing sport with the kids there as well. And that was a massive eye-opener in terms of the experience of refugees, what that experience is like. And also I had a spell for a few weeks of the wrath of the far right. And that was really bizarre. Like some of the things that they were sending me, because obviously I'd put on, we're going on this day, we're filling up a van, send us your stuff. And they were horrendous. some of the things that people sent me. So all of those were really insightful experiences for me.
Brilliant. Thank you. I always wonder how, as a sports person, you transition into what I'd call everyday life. Because so what was your experience? Because you're so focused for so long on reaching particular goals, and then you have to come down, because you know in everyday life it's not like that. It's kind of you're plodding along. So how did you transition from being a sports person into retirement, I should say?
Very badly, Deborah, because it's the hardest thing in sport I've ever had to do. And it wasn't my choice and it wasn't on my terms. I was meant to have the world title in the October and I got the last injury, which finished it all off in the June. So devastating. And I think, again, language is dead important. Personally, for me, transition doesn't come close. It's absolutely a bereavement. It really is. And with strangely enough, in the 2 years since, I've had my two biggest bereavements that I've had so far in my life, one being my granddad just in December, who got me into boxing, who ran our gym, who was one of the closest people in my life. And honestly, it's not been any different. It's different because it's a person, but what you go through, the stages of grief, all of that isn't any different. So for me, I wouldn't say it's been a transition. I'd say it's been a bereavement. It's coping with loss, because you lose so much. You don't just lose the day-to-day stuff you do. You lose a massive part of your identity, your purpose, who you are. And I've not got a dream anymore. And I've never had a life without a dream. Since being a really little kid, I've always had a dream and they've always been sport related. Some people don't have dreams, that's fine. But I always have. Now I haven't. I may have goals and visions, and I may get another dream. You know, you can't just pick one. They come to you, don't they? But if I don't, I don't. But there's so much that you lose. So I think it's incredibly difficult. I'm still figuring it out bit by bit. But I think some things that I've learned is, you know, about shifting your why, shifting your sense of self and purpose, and finding ways to still inspire and impact others and make a positive difference without sport being front and center. So that's what I'm trying to do.
That kind of leads me into my final question, because Stacey, you have got so much experience and so much to offer. Maybe you're still figuring it out, and I just wondered, where are you now? And you know, are you still going to figure in sport? Are you going to figure in kind of helping other people? Or, you know, some people set up gyms, some people, you know, there's footballers set up football teams, become coaches. Where are you in all of that?
Well, where I am now, I've always worked throughout my sports career anyway. Because there wasn't money in women's football and women's boxing when I was doing it. Of course, it's coming since, so I missed the boat with that, but there you go. But yeah, it's I've always worked alongside it. And that's another thing. People would say, well, you'll be all right because you've already got other stuff. That's, if you think of it as a bereavement, that doesn't make sense, does it? If you said, oh, my friend, whatever's died, well, we've got loads of other friends. It don't work. It doesn't stop you missing that friend. It's not the same thing. So in terms of where I'm at, I still work 2 days a week in the school, which is probably only going to be until I've been there 10 years now, but I need to sort of move on from that because I'm setting up Pave the Way, which is I've been running it self-funded for about 4 years, but now we've got charity status. And Pave the Way is about challenging gender stereotypes for boys, girls, men and women. And as part of the launch this summer, the first thing we're going to launch with is the Stories campaign, where we're asking people to submit their stories anonymously or with the name of their experiences, male or female, of what they've experienced with gender stereotypes. But anyway, so that's a real passion of mine, Deborah, that I want to, you know, pave the way and make a difference for the next generation. I present on the radio, which I really enjoy. And that's good because it gives you that element of nerves. When you've got live sport, loads of stuff can and does go wrong. And you're trying to react, you know, and like on the radio breaking news can happen. You know, my very first daytime show, what's it died? The Queen's husband. I mean, it was a pretty major, you know, and everyone's running around the newsroom, and I'm like, what's happening? And you know, I'm just trying to carry on in the studio, like, carry on talking. I'm there talking about Nintendo Game Boys because we're in the golden hour. I'm like, yeah, in 19, and I thought everyone who listens to this is going to think, is that silly cow or not? No, what's it's died. So anyway, you're reacting to stuff, so it's good. It gives you that bit of nerves and that bit of adrenaline. And then also I do the public speaking, which is a massive privilege because I get to hear, it's not quite the same like this, but in person, I get that enormous privilege of people coming to tell me their stories. And that's a lovely thing to hear other people's experiences and stuff. So yeah, I do radio, I do school, I do the public speaking, and I'm setting up the charity, which is why I need to leave school because I don't get any sleep whatsoever and I need to. And I want to learn drums. I want to learn to play the drums now, and I'm not having any time to bloody learn. And I've got nieces who I adore, so I need a better balance, but I'll get it.
Well, you know, thank you for that. Please keep doing
boxing class for everyone. So I've probably got about 20 people getting drenched waiting outside the gym now who are going to throttle me. So I am going to have to go because I'm supposed to be there at past. But I've loved chatting to you all. I am on LinkedIn. If you want to be my sort of friend like Lucy, then that's fine. You can
Stalker,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, use a false name if you want, Sandra Liz. Fine. Yeah, if you want to, you know, if there's anything I can do for anyone, or you just want to be involved with paving the way in some way, or I can support you in any way, just let me know, because you know, we're all positive people.
Please, can we give her a round of applause before she goes?
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Totally amazing, isn't she? You know,
Yeah,
really inspirational, fantastic, and so down to earth, and yet has achieved so much. And it's very, very hard for me to follow that, obviously. And I was going to share some of my story, but not least because of lack of time, but equally because it isn't a story that's half as exciting or inspirational as Stacey's. So what I just want to end with really is just sharing with you, although starting with a story, some of my, I suppose, you know, what I've experienced in my initial few weeks with Wish, and how that's shaping really the two key priorities that I think are for Wish over the next 18 months. And so much of it is aligned to everything we've heard from Stacey anyway. And I am going to start with a story. And the story starts that at the point that my appointment went out on social media, so another link to what Stacey's been talking about, you know, there were lots of supportive, congratulatory messages, as these things always are. And there was one exception, however, to that. And whilst the exception was by no means unpleasant, it came from a man who expressed the view that an equality network for women was just wrong. And in fact, wasn't it a juxtaposition, reinforcing exclusivity rather than inclusion? So I explained to that man that he was wrong, that in a world where women don't have equal standing, where we are subject to bias-based scrutiny in the workplace, where, you know, a year on, we're reflecting on everything that happened to Sarah Everard last year, you know, where we have those levels of violence against women and girls, it absolutely is right that we don't have equal standing. So professional women's networks are still really, really valid. And I told him that having a group focused on women isn't about exclusion at all. The allies are really, really critical. And again, you know, Stacey was referring to that. But it is important as well that groups who are disenfranchised and face significantly bigger barriers or hurdles, that they are provided with the time and the space, the safe space to be open about experiences and challenges, to share things, and that women's networks provide that inspiring, that powerful, that space and that support. And when you do that, when women have that opportunity, then it enables us to go back into the workplace, re-energized, refocused, with renewed enthusiasm and vigor. And actually, it enables us to bring our whole self to work. And in that sense, women's networks are absolutely critical on a journey to equality and inclusion, as opposed to the absolute opposite. You'd be unsurprised to hear, I didn't hear back from him. But it's still an important thing to say. But his comments were useful, and actually those comments, I suppose, with what I've learnt you know, in the few weeks that I've been here, really have helped shape some of those key priorities for the next 18 months. And I suppose if I put them into two headings, the two priorities are about networking and about inclusion. And we've already talked about it, you know, a number of different ways, from Deborah and then on to Stacey, about that value in networking and that value in supporting each other and being our own, or together being our positive petrol pumps, to use Stacey's phrase there. And what we do need to do is articulate that value clearly and put networking really at the heart of our description and use it to measure our success as well. Because being part of WISH, we're all unlocking our networks. So one of the things that we are going to do as a bit of a priority is introduce measures using the WISH acronym, which are all about the power of networking, about the welcoming environment, about being inclusive, about being supportive, and about being, you know, and creating those happier individuals. We need to be clear about it more. We need to talk about more about its the value of it. And as Stacey alluded to, that power of language is really important. So we need to have that common language and understanding about it. And in terms of inclusion, well, obviously that's so important. We have male allies. We need to recognize and value them. We do need to encourage their involvement where that's appropriate. We can't have conversations and expect things to change without people who can sometimes make those changes, or certainly we can support with making those changes, listening to what needs to happen. You know, again, just referring to LinkedIn and social media, we have lots of people asking to join the WISH LinkedIn network on a daily basis. Quite a lot of them are men, and every one of those requests that we get, I'm sending messages saying welcome or welcoming people as an ally. And there are some fantastic stories and, you know, comments that I'm receiving from people who are saying, I am an ally. This is really important for me. I know that, as Stacey said, you know, by actually leveling the playing field, it's better for everybody. And we need to, as well, in this inclusions piece, talk about and include all women. We need to recognise and respond to the diversity around us, recognise that the world is changing. Not everybody identifies in a binary male and female way, and this is really important. You know, and I think I would say if the Women's Institute can get this right and actually embrace trans inclusion, then absolutely, no, we need to be talking about this. We need to be, again, thinking about the language that we use, and we need to recognise that it's not just somebody, you know, you don't have to identify in a binary female way to share those experiences associated with the menopause, with sexism at work, with all of the things and the barriers. It isn't defined just by a binary male or female. So embarking on that inclusion journey and that reflection on the diversity of who we are, one of the things that we are doing and will follow on from here is some of that monitoring ourselves, because it's important that we know where we are on this journey to be able to make that progress. So one of the things we will be doing is some anonymous, confidential data monitoring for us as an organisation, so that we can then really be representative, inclusive, and, as Stacey talked about, share some of our stories as well for those who are wanting to share those stories. It's really, really important. And of course, inclusion goes a lot further than just the gender identity and gender expression piece. You know, one of our USPs as WISH is about having that both the private and the public sector involvement, and that's really important as well, and that's fantastic, and that makes us so much stronger. So it's important that, again, we talk about that and that we're very clear about that. Without doubt, you know, there's lots more to do on this journey to gender equality, to inclusion, and I'm really, really excited to be sharing with you, going with you on this journey. And I think, you know, the final thing I would like to say is something comes from Maya Angelou, but it totally resonates again with so much of what Stacey said. Together we're stronger. And as Maya said, we all rise when women rise. That's why the Women's Network is important, but it benefits everybody. So on that note, I'm conscious that we're nearly at time. You've all got Prosecco potentially to drink or chocolate to eat if you haven't finished it already. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for everything you do. You know, you are, as Deborah said, this organisation. Together we are stronger. and you do phenomenal work. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Look forward to meeting so many of you in person over the next year, I hope, and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you very much.